Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Beautiful You. I'm your host, Avantika. Thank you so much for being with us here today. As you all know, we are celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month and we're releasing a brand new episode each week. We are also doing a 31-day challenge on Instagram where we'll be sharing a daily prompt. So if you don't follow us on Instagram yet, go on Instagram, look up @beautifulyou.pod. And if you're listening to this in May, you'd be able to still catch some of the prompts and you'd be able to do it. Our goal with mental wellness campaign is to have, by the end of the month, to have the participants be more in tune with themselves as well as be more educated in different aspects of mental health and mental wellness. In today's episode, we have a really special guest with us. He's the founder of an organization called Bipolar India. He is absolutely a phenomenal man, and I actually met him through a peer support group. He is the founder of Bipolar India, right? So they have a peer support group, and I met him through that group, and it's been amazing, meeting him has generally been one of the best things that have happened to me through online communities. So we would be talking about bipolar disorder and his journey and the journey of Bipolar India as an organization as well. So before we dive into it, I would like to tell you a little bit about what bipolar disorder is. I have talked about it in one of my episodes where I shared my experience with bipolar disorder, and we have also curated a video project where people living with bipolar talked about their experiences and even more. So do check them out if you wish to gain more insight on the matter. I'll be linking all of them in the description below. Bipolar disorder was previously known as manic depression. It's a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, mania or hypomania, and lows, which is depression. An individual with bipolar experiences unusual shifts in their energy and activity levels and concentration. Bipolar disorder has 4 types: type 1, type 2, cyclothymia, and unspecified. It doesn't have a cure yet, but the symptoms can be well managed through talk therapy and medication. I go way more in depth in, like I said, in one of the episodes and also on that video project. So do check it out. It would be really helpful and really insightful. And yeah, let's get started with the episode. To celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month, we have an amazing guest with us today. Vijay is the founder of Bipolar India, a unique peer-led community founded in 2013. He's also the co-founder of Let's Walk Together, a Bipolar India initiative for disability inclusion. It aims to be a bridge between the vast community of persons living with mental health conditions and livelihood opportunities for them. He is the founding trustee of Mental Health Support Foundation India, which aims to help people help themselves. He has been living with bipolar disorder for 4 decades now. He has studied BCom at University of Mumbai. Before Bipolar India, he worked as a financial advisor. He also has a book titled A Bipolar's Journey from Torment to Fulfillment, where he chronicles his own story of bipolar disorder. He has been featured in a lot of videos across YouTube. He has been featured in a lot of articles as well, including Times of India, Economic Times, and there's so much more. I could go on and on about him and it wouldn't be enough. The number of lives he has touched through his work is insurmountable. So let's have the man speak for himself. Thank you so much for being here, Vijay. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for the over-generous introduction, I would say. And
it wasn't over-generous.
Yeah, you let it roll, if I can say that.
It was because you've done so much. Honestly, it is so inspiring to see all of the work that you've been doing and you continue to do and you plan on continuing doing it, So it's just apt, and I could just go on about it for a very long time, to be honest.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled. I'm glad to be on the platform today and up for all the questions that you have to ask me, Avantika.
Of course, yeah, we'll dive into it. So can you tell us your journey about from being a financial advisor to the founder of Bipolar India? What has that been like?
Firstly, we need to get to the root of the issue. Mm-hmm. So that onset happened very long ago when I was say age 14 or so. Yeah, and like in many cases of bipolar disorder, diagnosis happens many years after the onset. So what were it sort of the symptoms came up to me at that time was feeling lost, withdrawn from society, I was in the 10th boards that time in my class, from my class, I was withdrawn from my classmates. I was very depressed, and now I can recall that the depression was so severe that I was paranoid at certain points of time, thinking people were plotting against me. I mean, all these things we can now sort of connect the dots and place them into, psychological terms. But I was absolutely clueless back then. Yeah. So from that phase, diagnosis took a full 26 years when during my full-blown manic episode, I was diagnosed. Now, what happened in the intervening 26 years is pretty interesting. Yeah, you talked about my journey on the career front. So, right after my graduation, I was a graduate in financial accountancy from the Mumbai University. Was never really academically inclined. So I was pushed into, although I was quite a bright student, but I had no inclination to really pursue studies with any degree of seriousness. So I would say that I'm now grateful that I did complete my graduation. That background in commerce did help me through my future days that were to come through my journey as an entrepreneur and later on as in the financial field. So right after my graduation, I recall I was age 19. The very next day, not even till when the exam results come in, after my last exam I had appeared for, I joined my uncle in his enterprise, my maternal uncle. We were raised by my maternal uncle in a small village back then called Vasai. Now it's not at all a small village by any standards. My parents had got separated at age 5. So he was a father figure to us during those days of struggle. And I joined him in helping his sizable business that he ran. He had a cinema theater, an offset printing press. And I would say the 7 years that I was with him, it wasn't that I was working, that was my learning curve, Yeah. So it was out from university, and this was my post-graduation in hard, real life situation. It was a phenomenal period of learning, I would say, because he was a very disciplined and an inspiring person himself. It had to rub off on me, his kind of, the work ethic, the way we sort of shouldered responsibilities about the family and all the other friends. I think that became the bedrock of how I was shaped in the coming years. Right? Down the years, we found that our, thought processes didn't match. There is always this generation gap where the ideas of the young clash with the earlier generation. And we decided to part ways, of course, amicably at that. And he supported me even in my venture. And that is how I founded Frontline Communications. That was an audiovisual enterprise. And a pioneering one at that, if we go back to 1989, when there were very few such enterprises which were working in this domain, So what we were into is video projection and multimedia projection and other audiovisual equipment rental for corporate entities, for events and things like that. I had zero background in the technology field, and somehow I was so passionate about what I was doing that I picked up the ropes fairly easily. And in the short span, then within the 5-6 years, we were among the better providers of the services in Mumbai, I would say. And some of our clients rated us as the best in India. I wouldn't go to that extent, of course, right? And we had a lot of prestigious clients across the corporate space, the entertainment space, and it was a very fulfilling journey. But as we say, when life is going on in absolutely on a perfect path, there has to be a twist in the tail, right? And for me, the twist in the tail was the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Well, it doesn't happen in a snap.
How old were you at this age?
Yeah, so I was 40 at that time. I was single. Yeah, at that time I was single, planning to sort of settle down. There was a lot of things happening in my life when this happened. We had recently moved into our new home. The first home that I had purchased with our money. Okay, I lived with my sister and my mother. My father had passed away long ago, and as such, we were separated, as I said. So the three of us. So it's not that the diagnosis also happens like that in a snap, does it? Yeah, there is a story even beyond that, before that. So my behavior had been erratic for, I would say, at least a couple of years prior to that. So there was a build up to it, It's like, and awareness back then. So this is, I'm talking about the around the year 2000. Yeah. So if you go back more than 20 years, you can imagine how bleak the level of awareness must have been then. No social media, no internet to talk about. I mean, there was hardly real interaction happening on the net. Even that was nascent back then. So the cross flow of information was not there. The conversations were not happening. So to expect family also to be awareness about a condition such as bipolar disorder was a tall order, right? My sister being a very observant sort of a person, my elder sister, that is Tejal, she didn't know what was wrong with me, but she knew one thing for sure, that there was something seriously wrong with me. Because all of a sudden I was making grandiose plans, I was getting very irritable, spending money like there was no tomorrow, sort of getting into things that were sort of harming our enterprise. I purchased a vehicle against a loan which we didn't need. You can imagine the scale of things, the disruption that can happen. And so she said that this must come to a stop. And she was telling me that we need professional help, but in full-blown mania, you feel that you are on top of the world and everybody around you is crazy, and that's the kind of space I was in at that time. Yeah, that you don't understand me. I am the genius. I have been created to solve all the problems of the planet and stuff, ridiculous stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she sort of convinced me finally to see a psychologist. And she facilitated that appointment with Maya Kriplani, who was a noted psychologist at Jaslow Hospital back then. Yeah. So I was rambling all the way in the vehicle from my residence non-stop, absolutely non-stop. In fact, even at the psychologist's place, I was talking some rubbish. She just stared at me for a couple of minutes and said that you have come to the wrong professional. He needs to see a psychiatrist urgently. And my sister was so resourceful that she had already got the contact number of a psychiatrist. And I think she had already planned an appointment. You won't believe this, right? But she said that I would not go directly to a psychiatrist. So this was a softer way of arranging that, And we landed up directly from the Pedro Road Clinic to the Santa Cruz Clinic of Dr. Snell Mehta, who was my psychiatrist, the first psychiatrist I met. In the florid mania phase, it's, I think, very easy for a professional to make the diagnosis, okay, because otherwise bipolar disorder needs a lot of extensive sort of analysis and, going into history. It took 15 minutes flat to identify what the problem was, and he said that you are living with manic depressive illness. That was the clinical term for bipolar disorder way back then.
Yeah.
And my illness had progressed to such an extent, and he thought that I would be unmanageable at home. So I was transferred from the clinic directly to the hospital, Holy Spirit Hospital, and I was institutionalized for a week. All right. So that's how the span of, being in ignorance and disarray to the diagnosis actually happened at the age of 40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did that led to you being the founder of Bipolar India?
Oh, yeah. Now, one thing that hit me when I was lying on the hospital bed, because initially it was like, even after the medication began, it takes a lot, several days for everything to sink in, for things to stabilize. It was when that period of stabilization began that reality sunk in, and then it hit me hard. The thought that now that I am mentally ill, It was very difficult to digest. Yeah. And I am a person who's heading an enterprise, and now look where am I, right? So for me, the metaphor was that suddenly somebody had pulled the carpet from under my feet. That's what the metaphor I connected it to. Yeah, here I was ruling my world, so-called world, imaginary world, and this is what now the harsh reality was. And the stigma. The next thing was the stigma. What would extended relatives say, my friends say, what would my peers say? Would I lose respect from my, all the colleagues who I have built up such a reputation with? So all these kind of negative thoughts kept attacking my mind. Yeah, and one predominating thought that I had was the sense of isolation and loneliness. All right, I felt terribly isolated, and the thing was that I imagined that what I was suffering was a very, very rare illness. Maybe 1 in a million has this. I had the biggest notion that how prevalent it is, that there were so many others like me also going through the horrors I have gone through. I think that was perhaps the seed of communicating my journey to somebody else also. Maybe that would help somebody else. That was where the seed came from. That struggle of being completely isolated and feeling that I'm alone. There's nobody to listen to me, or things like that. Of course, that was just the original space where I came from. It was a long struggle after the diagnosis also, because you would be aware that the bigger the gap between onset and diagnosis, the longer the illness is allowed to progress, whether in physical or mental health domain. It is more difficult to pull back the person back to some degree of stability, right? So, but I had the strength of patience, determination, and that perseverance to stick through the process. So it took me a decade after the diagnosis and treatment began to find some degree of stability. That was how difficult it was. And that's another message that I would like to share with people, that we cannot expect results overnight at times. Mental health is a complex phenomenon. We need to sort of trust the process. Of course, we need to go to a professional who we trust innately. That is critical. But once we do that, we need to sort of go by what is advised to us. Of course, think for ourselves, no doubt about it. It's not that we are surrendering our thought process to whatever is told to us. But by and large, sticking to the process is important. Mm-hmm. So it was around, I think, 2012, 13 that I became a little stable. And then I began writing. Yeah. So the seed of Bipolar India is actually in my writing. Okay. So that is when social media had just taken root in India. It's around 2010 or so. Facebook and all those platforms had come up. And I thought that this was a good space to explore my writing skills. And I started a personal blog. And on that, one of the blogs was At the Crossroads of Life. Mm-hmm. That was my coming out in open about my journey with bipolar disorder. This was somewhere in 2012.
That must have been terrifying.
So you can imagine back then, not too many people were open about their, struggles, especially with severe mental illness in public domain. And I got a lot of response to it on my blog, as comments, on social media, even from my school friends. Okay, some negative, most of it positive and encouraging. Yeah. And this is where the magic happened. So reading that blog, one of my mentor friends, who was at that time an online friend from Facebook, Puneet Bhatnagar, rang me up, spoke to me for a while, and then landed up at my home. He spoke to me one of my mentor friends, Puneet Bhatnagar, who was an online connect at that time. Yeah, we are just casual online connects.
Yeah.
He read that post of mine, saw that there was some potential in it. He rang me up, and then landed up at my home. All right. For 2 hours, he grilled me, heard my story, and he says, "Vijay, we need to take this much further. It can't be limited to your blog." Yeah. Can you believe it? On that day, Bipolar India was founded. He coined the name, he registered the domain, and he set up the shell website for us in a jiffy.
Wow.
So sometimes you can imagine, I mean, I can't seek the credit for what we are all sort of benefiting from. It is the idea of a person who I consider a genius of a human being, is always self-effacing, doesn't ever seek credit. But he's a person of ideas, and ideas which add value to society. You know, that's what I've seen. Something which is very specific to Puneet Bhatnagar. Yeah, so he set off this, whole thing rolling. Okay.
That's beautiful. So thank you for sharing the journey with us. That's I didn't know that it was the story went on regarding that. I had somewhat of an idea about Bipolar India, but I didn't know this is how it was founded. That is wonderful.
And it's interesting also, isn't it? Yeah. Quite interesting. And the person had very little connect with the mental health field. You know, that is something even more amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody, just an ideas person, seeing the potential of taking it to an extent far beyond what I would have ever imagined at that stage.
And we are seeing the results now. Clearly, he was very right. And this is just the beginning of Bipolar India, you know.
And Avantika, it's eerie, I would say. It's uncanny. What he had visualized at that time, a decade back, I'm living those days right now.
Oh.
And when he was telling me all this, I couldn't believe him at all. Trust me. I was thinking, what is he talking about? What is the potential that he sees in me? I couldn't believe anything that he was talking about. Let me be very frank about my own doubts, the self-doubts that we always harbor.
Yeah. He was very visionary, but honestly, it's the work that you have put in that has made Bipolar India what it is today.
Well, that's what he also says, but I think such kind of impetus is necessary, and it's not just that he set the ball rolling. He's been my mentor right through the journey. So for any substantial or significant move that I make about any, initiative that we are going to launch for our organization, I sound it out to him before I head into it. Intuitively, I know that the advice coming in will help us to move in the right direction. And he's always been there for us, selflessly, never wanting to be under any spotlight whatsoever. So such kind of mentoring is invaluable. Let me share that.
Speaking of mentors, Bipolar India talks a lot about how important it is for people with mental illnesses, people who are living with mental disorders, to have support and to have caregivers, right? How important would you say having a caregiver is for every individual?
So firstly, from my story, Avantika, I might literally not have been alive without intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my recklessness was going so out of hand. And you can imagine what happens when a person is out in the streets in full-blown mania. I might be driving a car at that time, and how ridiculously risky it can become.
Mm-hmm.
So without any exaggeration, I would say that without a caregiver like my sister Tejal, I might not have been alive today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is not to sound dramatic. Yeah. And this was not only leading to the diagnosis, but hand-holding me through my toughest days. Mm-hmm. So having somebody unconditionally be there while you, believing in you when any severe mental illness initially crushes our self-belief. I mean, everything, there are more question marks than answers to what's lying ahead in our lives, right? That's what we sort of experience. And then you have some reassuring person by you all, day in, day out, saying that, oh, look, that we'll see through this. Yeah, this is just a phase in your life. How powerful is that? It's very difficult to sort of describe the value of a compassionate, observant, and a caring sort of a person within family. Of course, my mother was there, but in certain such matters, the elderly people can be clueless, about how to guide us. Of course, the love was forthcoming, no question. Yeah, I got married much afterwards. After the diagnosis, So my the wife came into my life afterwards. So of course now we have a sort of a the caregiving roles have shifted. Uh, the baton has been passed, and like my wife jokingly says that he is his own caregiver, so that she hardly is my caregiver, because now that level of self-awareness has been sort of developed. I know where I'm headed for the better for this part of the journey, and so the need for caregiving is lesser. But yes, again, I would emphasize, when floundering, the worth of a caregiver is sort of, you cannot sort of overemphasize that. Secondly, I would say this. In our community, I observe a lot of conversations around this. At sometimes, family members can be in denial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that can be very harsh for that person. Yeah, that look, you are
It's
making it up. Yeah, that you are making it up. You are lazy. Friends of your age, everybody has problems. The typically stigmatizing and dehumanizing kind of statements that can crush a person's spirit, and those are the last things that the person wants to hear, right? And this is. So I'm not being insensitive to parents or siblings or whoever is staying there. They might be coming from their own space, but I'm saying these circumstances also do happen in a person's life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here, what I would suggest is expand your circle.
Yeah.
I found my Puneet Bhatnagar. Can you find somebody else to support you? For instance, one of our members in our community was brought in by one of his friends.
Mm-hmm.
He got in touch with me through Facebook, kept conversing with me, persuaded his very, very depressed friend to somehow attend one of our meets.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought about a turnaround in his life. A friend of his, So caregiving doesn't have to be limited into within the domain of family. If within family, it is of course invaluable, but it can extend to your peers within your. If you are working in your professional circle, a few people who you can trust your story with, who are empathizing, who are non-judgmental. Caregiving can come from a lot of sort of people, So let's not even limit it to the term we strongly associated with, parents or siblings and just terms.
That is such an important point, because when I went to the conference and I saw so many people living with disorders and their caregivers were there, it made me realize that I never had a caregiver myself, not in my family. Like you had mentioned, everyone was in denial. From literally getting the diagnosis to accepting it and to managing my lifestyle around it, it's always been me who is handling it all the time. And it has been incredibly hard to do that. And I realized, like, when I was looking at other people with caregivers, I realized my life would have been so much easier if I had just a caregiver, who would be with me. But now that you bring up expanding it to other people, I got to thinking and I realized just now that I always had someone at different stages. I never had like one person. Well, for a year I would have one person, and then maybe we don't. Maybe I don't confide in them as much, and then it's the other one. Like I was always the constant, of course, but then there would be just like different people, because you can't expect just one person to be with you throughout. Even for them, it takes a huge emotional toll. But yeah, I never really had a caregiver growing up at any point, but it's like I had multiple people with whom I could share different parts of my life.
And glad you acknowledged that. And kudos to you that you managed to pull yourself out without a direct caregiver in your life. I know how difficult that can be, Avantika. Yeah, so kudos to you. By the way, you talked about the journey of Bipolar India. The one important link I cannot afford to miss out on. I spoke about Puneet Bhatnagar. There was another angel in my life. Okay, almost at the same time period. Puneet came in first, and a little later she stepped in. Across the shores from Rochester, New York, Jennifer Sertle.
Jennifer?
Sertle, S-E-R-T-L.
Sertle, okay.
She's a thought leader in what she does, a huge voice in industry and leadership change, and a phenomenal thinker. And guess what? she became my mentor for a full 15 months in that critical formative period of my life.
So when
No
you got the
questions
diagnosis,
asked.
right?
No questions asked.
Wow.
Yeah. And, the writing of my book, I owe a lot to shaping my thoughts, how I would lead my life, how Bipolar India, what we would do with Bipolar India. And at that time, I would say, again in 12-13, I was not completely in remission at that time. I was still sort of those, the mini bumps in those journeys. So I got a caregiver coming in from across the shores also, right? A phenomenal person with insights and wisdom. I mean, her words could be framed and sort of kept for posterity. That is how valuable her insights were. Yeah. So, and in fact, our community owes our big time for a sort of unstated contribution. By the way, the forward to my book has been written by her, and it will blow your mind. It's been written with such sensitivity, power, and grace. Yeah, so that's a clue about how capable she is as a writer and a thinker also. Yeah. So
That's check it out for sure. Yeah.
So I needed to acknowledge that person also, and also the book also became a bridge of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So many people who read the book at that time, I know that the book now to me seems a very flawed piece of work because I have evolved a lot since those years, a decade down the line. But at that time, it had relevance for the people who read it, thankfully. And many people felt that, it touched their lives, gave them hope, it inspired them to believe in themselves. And in a way, that was mission accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
What the book also did was help people connect to me. And then, of course, many people then joined the community through that route, So,
I absolutely love how you came from the diagnosis. Your thought process was, okay, I need to speak up so other people could relate to it and feel less alone. It's throughout the years I've realized how important just talking about your own journey is, and because you never know how it will help someone else feel less alone, and how to feel other person feel connected.
And besides, writing is therapeutic to me. Okay, otherwise also. So even when I used to write my blogs, they used to be on random topics, everything under the sun. I used to write poetry, it could be humor, it could be about nature, it could be fiction. I used to write a lot of stuff back then. So that was also therapeutic to me. So you can imagine the therapeutic power of writing a book like this. It was cathartic. It was a release of a lot of load and burden that I was carrying inside me. I felt lighter. My self-awareness grew. So I tell a lot of people in our community. Everybody of us has a story to tell, right? Everybody, from our community has a story to tell. Not everybody is ready to share it in public domain. If not, why not journal it for ourselves? Why not write a book for ourselves?
Yeah.
Publish it when you're ready to. But the story needs to be told, even if it is for yourself.
That is so beautiful. The story does need to be told. Yeah. So one more thing I wanted to talk about before going further. You mentioned how in 10th grade you're going through depression. And was that a time period where maybe anyone, maybe your sister or any of your parents, or maybe you thought about seeking help because you're going through depression back then?
That's a very significant question you bring up. The thing was, I was not very communicative at that point of time. The whole issue with mental health is, even whether it is for a professional or for family members, to spot a red flag, we need to communicate our problems, well, right? For them to spot a problem. I used to clamor. So all my turmoil within was limited to myself. So what they saw was only the superficial, not my real turmoil, which was never really expressed to them. So then can I blame them for not taking professional help at that time? I wouldn't, Avantika, right? Second thing is, I was in adolescence. That I was 14 when I was in the 10th boards. That problem spilled over to my 11th when I joined college. Yeah, intensified. In fact, I would say at that time. So adolescence is also ascribed. All these problems are also sometimes ascribed to hormonal changes happening in adolescence. And then when you go back to those number of years, yeah. So I am talking about the period of the late 70s.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the late 70s, so it's almost like prehistoric times when we related to the mental health kind of awareness journey. Yeah. The late 70s.
Oh yeah, 70s. Okay.
Late 70s, it's almost like the prehistoric times in India when connected to the mental health, conversations. Yeah. What was mainstream media talking about? Had you ever heard of something, articles or conversations happening in mainstream? We never had any other domains except mainstream media to go to, right? Yeah, that's all we had. Right? So awareness was zilch at that time. So I don't blame my family members. And these episodes repeated themselves. I remember I was in my first year degree college, and they used to happen at the cusp of exams. So during Jan, Feb, I used to fall seriously ill. And the intensity used to increase at each episode. Okay, so all I was the help I got was I was taken to a physician, and they said that it was a vitamin B12 deficiency or things like that. I was given some shots, and it passed off as that. Yeah. So 3-4 episodes like this.
Shots or shots for vitamin B12.
Injection shots. So this is because of vitamin B12 deficiency. I can recall a physician noting it down on his prescription, neurosis, which is a term now I can associate with. Okay, yeah. But what was given to me was just the vitamin B12 shots. Nothing for the neurosis. I wasn't recommended to a professional, right? Yeah. So if it was neurosis, why didn't the physician will lead me on to somebody who could have helped me with my problems, right? Yeah. Of course, I'm not grudging what happened back then, but these things can nip problems in the bud. You would agree, right?
Yeah. Because if you had gotten the diagnosis much sooner, so many of the things could have been avoided, and it does get worse and intensifies as you age. So
the brain undergoes so many changes because of the multiple episodes that it encounters and things like that. But I learned to take these things in my stride. We cannot turn back our clock, can we? It's just water under the bridge. Let go of the past and sort of be in the moment. Do what you can best with what you have right now with you, right? Because there will always be regrets and ifs and buts in life. These are the imponderables which will not lead us anywhere. That's the way I look at things.
So in today's episode, I also want to explore the entrepreneurial journey of yours. But before we get into it, just one question that popped into my head just now, that a lot of people back in like 80s and 90s were prescribed shocks, ECTs and stuff to treat bipolar disorder. Did you experience any of that during your journey, or do you think those work, or like what's your opinion on it?
So firstly, the psychiatrist I was under was a very conservative psychiatrist, very ethical one, I would say, Dr. Snell Mehta, and I would be very thankful that I was referred to a professional of the highest caliber, of the highest ethical standards which one would expect, and a very compassionate person wanting to make a difference in the person's life. So his approach essentially was ECT as last resort.
Yeah.
Okay. So never through my journey have I been through the STD process. But before we stigmatize ECTs, let's also, that is also not the right narrative to, present to the audience. ECTs do have a place in certain specific situations. That is best left to the mental health professionals to decide on. We can only say that in my case, it was not really warranted, and that is why the route wasn't sort of taken. Yeah. So it's dangerous to generalize about these things. Yeah. And then sort of castigate a process like ACTs, which can be life-saving for people as well. Yeah, let's remember that also. Yeah.
I had this conversation with a guy who was in his mania, and he got prescribed ECT, and he went through the shocks and everything, but his situation got worse in his situation. So it was pretty brutal for him afterwards, because instead of medications, he was just put on the shocks, and it didn't really help his case very well.
Yeah, so see, let's also accept another aspect about mental health treatments, not only ECTs. Yeah, so there are different forms of treatments available to us. Yeah, one we of course know, which is the conventional form, which is there in the form of psychiatric medications that we all are on. Yeah, the other form is the slightly more invasive one, which we would call as ECTs, and now we have the even more advanced forms of therapies coming in, such as RTMS, yeah, and so on and so forth. Ketamine therapy is still to be formally approved, but it is being offered in India. Mm-hmm. Now, I have heard about various experiences about all these modalities from various voices. So, based on these, experiences, we cannot model one as effective and one as ineffective, as completely on one side or completely on the other side. That's what I learned from my experience. Yeah. So, how these different treatments would work for different people. That is why the judgment of the practitioner is super important. Because at the end of the day, it is for the psychiatrist to take the call, and for the person or the family to sort of agree to that process. Because now ECTs cannot be given under compulsion, if you are aware of it, after the advent of the Mental Health Care Act. Mm-hmm. Consent is needed. Without explicit consent, ECTs cannot be administered. So if I am in mania, that means that I have lost capacity to decide on my own behalf. So my nominated representative or a family member, as the case might be, would take the decision in my on my behalf, and either say yes to the doctor or no to the doctor. That no, we are not okay with it. Yeah, mm-hmm. I am known of families who have stood steadfast that no, they will not go ahead with the ECTs, come what. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the process, so the approaches can vary. So now it's important to educate people that we have this right to, even choose the path of treatment. Yeah. It's not that some process is going to be dumped on us and we have no choice or say in that matter. Yeah,
it's so we can. That we had that law reinforced in India.
Yeah, so this is the Mental Health Care Act 2017 I'm talking about, yeah? An act of the Parliament.
Just before the recording, we were talking about how we expect too much from there's not enough leeway given to the professionals out there, and we were mainly talking about physical health situation, right? But then I wanted to talk about that regarding mental health professionals. Because what happens is sometimes, let's say, in a hurry, people, they are humans, I get that. But then when it comes to something so extreme, just something which could be potentially extreme, like the shock therapy or any medications which could be just altering, just because the psychiatrist or any mental health professional made a wrong call, it could potentially lead to so many other changes in the client's or the patient's lifestyle, and just even physiologically, it would affect a lot, right?
So see, here I have a simple process here. Mm-hmm. Okay, Avantika. Judgments can go right or wrong, because as you just discussed that they are also human beings, right? That error can happen. Yeah. So what do I look for in a psychiatrist? Let's turn it around to that perspective. Mm-hmm. My psychiatrist needs to give me adequate time per session. Mm-hmm. At least 30 to 40 minutes. Otherwise, the psychiatrist doesn't know what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. Fundamental aspect of it. Right? Yeah. He has to dig deep within into what I'm going through in the current frame of mind, what are my thought processes. Only then can he or she it's not always he or she can assess what my current state of mind is, and then accordingly adjust medicines or take whatever decision. So, the first point. Second point is, I would demand my psychiatrist to be thoroughly transparent in the conversation. If I ask about the side effects about a medication, I would expect honest answers.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. About other possible treatments, I would expect unbiased, honest answers. Yeah, right. I used to get all of this. And thirdly, I need to get a sense that my doctor, look, I have problems in my process. As I explained, that it took me 10 years to sort of come back to a semblance of stability, yeah, despite so many different drugs being tried, combinations, terrible side effects at some points of time, but I stuck the process. You know why? I sincerely believed my psychiatrist cared for me, and at the end of the day, he wanted me to see me as a healthy and stable person, and he was putting in his best possible effort.
Yeah.
So if that is coming across, then why would I question anything else? Then there is no room for doubt in my mind. Yeah, why isn't this working? And all those things go out of the window, because I have got these three basics sort of sorted out. 3 boxes ticked. Yeah. So, and continuing on that part, the community members say that, look, I went to so many psychiatrists. My earlier diagnosis was depression. Then later on, it changed to so and so. It's only after 9 years it was identified as bipolar disorder. This is a global phenomenon. Let's accept that. Psychiatry is not still such an accurate science. Yeah, that all the answers are available with that degree of accuracy. Most of the diagnosis happens on accurate description of symptoms, of family history. So our communicating things with a lot of accuracy has a lot of bearing on how the diagnosis comes across, for one thing. And even with our communicating very well also, there can be gray areas. So let's be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
And give space to the practitioners for that, whether it is a therapist or whether it is a psychiatrist that we are going to. Yeah, there can be errors. So if the effort was put in, then I wouldn't blame the psychiatrist. Where I would be holding a slight grudge in my mind, if I was just dished a prescription and somebody says to me that you come after a month, then I would harbor doubts in my mind that does he really care about where am I headed?
How do we hold such mental health professionals or just doctors in general accountable?
That's a very tough question.
Yeah, I know. It's bringing up the memory that, so right now my psychiatrist that I'm talking to, she is amazing. Even like the slightest side effects if I'm experiencing, we would talk about it, and I know that she's there and we are working together. But when I was 16, 17, I was seeing this psychiatrist. I told him I had bipolar because another psychiatrist had told me. So I hadn't gone through any sort of interventions or tests. I was diagnosed because my dad was diagnosed. So it's like, oh, it's genetic. So yeah. And then this psychiatrist that I was seeing, he prescribed me an antidepressant, which made me experience short-term memory loss as one of the side effects. And he told me that is completely normal for you to experience it. But I was 16, 17, and it's so scary to experience something so severe. And he never once changed the medication. But the psychiatrist that I'm seeing right now, if something is this severe, then she would change the medication. He never experimented, because I know that it takes experimentation with medication as well. So how do we hold them accountable?
So I would say, when I say, I've talked about communication, right? And you had this issue with memory. Okay. So being sensitive to our issues is a key part of psychiatry.
Yeah.
Right? So our problems cannot be brushed off as, okay, you have to take it in your stride. That can't happen every time, Avantika. Some are problems that affect our functionality, our day-to-day living, and you can't just brush them off as say, okay, look, you have to live with these side effects. Right? Yeah. So my psychiatrist earlier and now my current psychiatrist, Dr. Milan Balakrishnan, both I find very understanding in those respects. Okay. So I'll give an example. If I'm going to sleep through half of my working day, how can that be sort of said as, okay, this is a regular effect of the medicine and you'll have to live with it for your life. So am I going to be a vegetable for my life? Are you expecting me to be that? So accountability is also about that. Being sensitive to our client's needs. Yeah. Being sensitive to our client's needs, being ready to adapt the medications if the need arises, not flippantly. And every time I go across and say, look, I think this was not working, but on the sound judgment the professional makes, based on the facts. Yeah. So I have been very, very fortunate in this regard that my psychiatrists have been very receptive to my feedback on the problems that I was encountering. So if I would talk about loss of motivation or whatever, my medicines used to be tinkered to adjust to where I would want to be, sort of.
Yeah.
Right. And importantly, the focus was on my functionality all through. So accountability is not only about, dealing with the symptoms of the condition, but also ensuring that the person can function in the day-to-day, activities, whether one might be a homemaker, one might be a career person, a student like you are. But what if you're going to flunk all your exams because of your meds? It doesn't help your cause, does it? So I would say accountability is about that. And again, all the three components which I had mentioned earlier about giving adequate time, being transparent, and sort of coming across as a person who cares. I think that to me is the hallmark of what I constitute as accountability from my professional, whether a therapist or a psychiatrist.
That is such important information because I hadn't thought about it, and that generally helps. That is those three components here.
And one thing we would like to also say is, here we talk about psychiatrists. There is so much need of concurrent therapy also to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because what I have believed or I have sort of figured out is the drugs are for my biomedical problems, right? What about the turmoil in my mind?
Yeah, the cycle.
What about the thought processes, my sort of mental blocks? The medicines are not going to fix my mental blocks per se.
Yeah.
Right? So that is where a therapist can lend solid support to the ongoing treatment. Yeah, I think in India that is undermined a lot, and we need to lay emphasis on that. That is not only psychiatry. You follow the treatment path and you come out, on a absolutely level walking, path. It doesn't work like that. It has to be an interdisciplinary approach. And also what we talk about so often in the community, Avantika, about the holistic healing approach.
Yeah.
Since we are talking about this, that one is so both these components, psychiatry, therapy, is coming in from the professionals to us. What are we doing as self-care? What's that component?
Yeah.
How significant is that in our journey to sustainable recovery? To reduce the dependence on medicines, if possible, over a period of time, are we doing the best on our part? So now, if we have evidence that things like pranayam, exercise, maintaining the sleep, hygiene, that timings, which is so critical to mood disorders, especially, right? Journaling. What kind of an effort are we putting on our own part? To the extent possible. Not everybody can be a superhuman and get everything, sort of ticked off. But to the extent possible, I guess everybody can find time to, exercise for 20 minutes a day, do pranayam for 5-10 minutes a day at least. Sleeping on time might not be possible depending on your work situation or, kind of job you hold. I mean, that's a different challenge. But at least the controllables that we have in our hands. I mean, are we leaning with our weight into the recovery process
Yeah.
and
What are,
solidifying?
of course, yeah. What are your non-negotiables to lifestyle management that you personally follow?
So for me, my day is incomplete without pranayam. Yeah. And my pranayam, I'm a bit rigorous about what I do. 45 to 50 minutes of pranayam every day, 45 minutes to 50 minutes of workout a day. That goes workouts are for 5 days a week at least, and pranayam almost every day of the week. Yeah, because I don't consider that as a it doesn't need a rest day as such. And I think that discipline also came in because of my early struggle with asthma.
Okay. Yeah.
So even before bipolar hit me like a storm, the bigger challenge in my life was my rapidly intensifying struggle with asthma. And it was life-threatening. So sometimes, discipline is thrust onto you. It's not that I was naturally so disciplined and a good boy kind of a person. I was one of the lazier guys around, admittedly. But circumstances sort of lead you onto the path of discipline because there is no other choice in front of you. If you want to stay alive, you want to stay healthy and energetic, this is what you have to put in every day of your life. And I continued that effort to sort of pursue for my recovery from bipolar disorder. So that discipline wasn't such a big sort of an onus for me or a burden for me.
Yeah. Are you still on medication?
Yes, I am on maintenance medication. Another key question I think many people ask us. In fact, today I got a question from Facebook just before we are headed into this recording. Are there really people who live without medication and are stable with bipolar disorder? So, see, my answer to this is very straightforward. To me, it is the objective that matters. What's my objective? My objective is to be being healthy, being balanced, being functional, being a responsible head of my family, of the community, and whatever else I do. Yeah. And for me, my peace of mind I have reclaimed through a lot of turmoil, struggle. It does not come easy. The calmness that I enjoy today, the fulfillment that we talk about. Am I going to be compromising that for just wanting to be off medicines for some reason?
Right. Yeah.
Medicines are to me, they are a contributory to what I am today. Okay, they don't define me. Neither does bipolar disorder define me any longer, right? So they are a small part of what I am about. It's our overemphasis on, whether I need to be on medication, whether I can be off medication, that we lose the sort of, the whole picture. So to me, I've never even been tempted to ask my doctor, can we sort of taper down my medication and try out that whether we would be stable for say maybe after say the period of 3 months or so, because I don't see the purpose of going that path. I'm on minimal maintenance medication now. My side effects are as good as non-existent. All my blood reports are normal. I mean, we worry about so many issues related with long-term medication. All my parameters as far as the blood reports are perfect to the T at age 60 also. So what else can I ask for? So wouldn't you agree the emphasis should be on stability, being in remission, rather than these questions of being off meds?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to be on this path. Like all conditions, bipolar disorder, the severity of with which it affects different people also is different. Environments in which people live is different.
Yeah.
So no two human beings are alike. No two human beings with the same diagnosis are not alike. How they respond to meds are not alike. It is not alike. So we're talking about so many different issues. Yeah, right. So it is very person specific. I know of people who have been off meds for a while. Some of them do admit to going through their ups and downs. And I wouldn't want to go through that part. Why should I again go through even mild roller coaster kind of a ride when I'm stable with being on meds? When they are just maintenance dosages.
If you are comfortable, could you tell us which medicines are you on at the moment?
Does it really help? Because I firmly believe not to share these things in public domain. Avantika, there's a reason, ethical reason. Because, in the past, I've been asked this question by a lot. Because people feel if I'm so stable for so long on these meds, it translates to these meds being the best for bipolar disorder, doesn't it?
Oh, right. Yeah.
That is the only reason. That is the only reason, for me not sharing this on public domain, because it comes with a sense of responsibility, right? Yeah, it doesn't really work like that. Yeah.
Of course, no, I understand. I only ask because there are certain psychology students who would also be listening to this episode. So that's it. But that's completely understandable. And yeah, I didn't think about it like that. So, yeah.
So, when we talk about that I am on so and so medication and it has kept me stable for so long, the sort of message going across is, and especially to somebody who is vulnerable, who is in an impressionable frame of mind at that point of time, that look, let me try these medicines. And I have had such a sort of conversations with people. I would like to know what you are on, what has kept you stable. But one size does not fit all. Let me be very, very honest. So, medicine A working for somebody brilliantly will have disastrous results for me, and vice versa.
Of course, yeah. So, moving on to the entrepreneurial journey that you had, what sort of challenges did you deal with and continue to deal with while establishing Bipolar India?
So, in the journey of entrepreneurship, one of the issues was my sense of integrity, ethical boundaries I had for myself. Businesses don't run on those lines easily. Yeah. So I was a stickler for that cause, but I stuck to my grounds. So we had a select set of clients. Some of them were elite clients. We are not sort of hankering after capturing half of the market share. So to be, we are happy with what we did in our own way. So we could be called as a boutique supplier of equipment. That term. We could. So we had a small segment of clientele who was very satisfied with what we were doing for them, and we were quite content with that. Yeah, and my whole approach was building on that process, and sort of taking it. So that coinage that time in those decades was very famous back then in advertising. From customer satisfaction to customer delight, that's what I believed in. And I used to coin slogans for myself also. So we had our slogan was in pursuit of excellence. Way back then we had that as our tagline, right? So for me, I never looked at it as an enterprise per se. For it, even that was something I was passionate about. Money was just an outcome that came in. And fortunately, I made a decent amount of money during that enterprise. And plus my ability to invest the money wisely helped me sort of make me sort of self-sufficient now, so that I can talk about doing this kind of social impact work now, right? And what it did help me in conjunction with Bipolar India, that question you asked me about, that entrepreneur journey, that sense of leadership which was there, that became innate to me. To see adversities in life. An enterprise also sees a lot of these ups and downs by recognizing talent in the right people, empowering other people, realizing that an organization is not about a single person, that we need to take a backseat at various points of time. Even in the journey of Bipolar India, that is still a process that we are into. We are still not into that. That we have fantastic leadership coming in from all age groups. We are seeing that happen. That is so heartwarming and really, really beautiful. So that is again a model that I am imbibing from my enterprise journey. Because I'll share one thing with you. We were doing such complex and prestigious events such as the launch of Microsoft Pan India. We used to do the multi-city launch, and we were doing the Mumbai launch simultaneously with the global events. Okay, how imagine how, okay, none of our employees was even a graduate.
Wow.
Okay, so my vision back then was, who's going to employ such people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe I was a soft-hearted entrepreneur even way back then. None could speak English, and we dealt with clients who used to come from from Japan, the US, and Europe, and imagine how we pulled off such events and had thoroughly satisfied clients. There was something working for us. I can imagine. Yeah. None could, maybe they could understand a bit of English, but nobody could talk in English. None of them.
That's insane. That's such an empowering opportunity for them.
Yeah. So those sort of values I sort of carry. They were there, instilled me even before the organization took shape, and we are just sort of carrying it forward. And now we are at the cusp of something really momentous, I feel. Yeah. Bipolar India now is formalized as a public charitable trust in 2022. You mentioned that in this short introduction, and we have named the organization Mental Health Support Foundation because the conversation needs to go beyond one diagnosis to any mental health problem that a person is living with, because our community itself is not limited to bipolar disorder at all, right? So we have people with all sort of mental health diagnosis and challenges coming in. Another key segment that we focus upon, which we cannot overlook, is family caregivers. So we also have a separate dedicated community for family carers. Because the kind of sharing that takes place between them is a little different from what happens in a generalized peer support, sort of a segment. Yeah. And you spoke briefly about the livelihoods initiative. Yes, that is named letswalktogether.org, and we have named it thus because we believe all stakeholders need to walk this journey, including the people living with mental health conditions, HR, companies, policymakers, government. All these people, unless we are collectively on this bandwagon, we will not make a dent in the massive problem that we face here. So, for instance, we have 40 CVs already on the site. Yeah. But getting them placed this is where we need to sort of take the next step forward. Yeah. And so now we have the next phase will be to implement what we have been promising about all these years and really delivering on the promises. One key lesson for me is, Avantika, our idea of what recovery is a very limited idea. Recovery in the mental health space. Yeah. Typically, recovery from mental illness is construed as the symptomatic format of recovery. Yeah? Look, this person is completely sincere, or at the most medicine-free. Recovery, to me, is incomplete without rehabilitation and assimilation in society.
Wow, that goes a long way. Yeah.
Isn't that what it is supposed to be about?
Yes, yeah.
When we talk about 150 million Indians needing mental health intervention according to the Mental Health Survey in 2016-17, is this a minority that we are talking about at all?
No.
Isn't it a larger cause for society to also think on these lines that assimilation of such a humongous number of people is a collective responsibility?
Yeah. We talk about how there are resources, but in the end, you see so many instances where people lose their jobs just because people at higher position get to know that they are diagnosed with a disorder. And then it's considered to be a major weakness that they literally lose their jobs. So that's not really recovery if you're not able to sustain a job, have a livelihood.
And then again, it's that chicken and egg thing. So your loss of job affects your mental health. There is also the question of economic necessity in a country like India, where we don't have real social support. Do we have a social support system to talk about, right? Being unemployed for people coming from a socially, economically deprived background, how are they going to sustain themselves? So these are the real hard aspects also, which are which need to be part of mainstream conversations. Yeah, when we talk about such stories. So that is why I firmly believe recovery is incomplete without rehabilitation and assimilation, and mental health support foundation is going to bridge the entire journey. We are not going to talk about just symptomatic recovery. To us, that is not doing justice to the cause. Yeah. So we are going to straddle all the pain points across the path.
I am so excited for Bipolar India's future. It looks so bright, and there are so many cool things which are happening, which are insane. You haven't even talked like about half of the things which are in the working, and it's honestly, I'm so excited.
Yeah, so Avantika, so it's better to let the work talk for ourselves, rather than talk about future projects. That's what I believe in. So, of course, there is so much of exciting stuff happening. One is our ongoing collaboration with Agatsu Foundation, which we have found so much synergy with, their objectives, their approaches, their whole way of looking at mental health is very, very aligned with the way we are headed, So that is because we are careful with the organizations we align with and join hands with. Okay, we are not so hasty in that respect. Yeah. So that is one of the things that I can talk about, because now that is at a well-developed state of development. Yeah, and we are collaborative on a lot of community activities, which I think will help our community members in Mumbai, at least to a large extent, in feeling less alone, feeling less sort of distressed. Yeah, these kind of supportive mechanisms will help in these important areas. Might not seem very critical from a broad perspective, but I think they are significant. Yeah, because there was some research I just read yesterday about the impact of loneliness on health. Yeah, right.
It goes a long way. People say that it has a very debilitating effect. Yeah, even on physical health. It's not just the mental health.
So at one level, our community also does that, at least at a virtual level, during our peer support meets, opening up even within the meets also proves therapeutic for persons. It's a lightening up, you feel lighter as a human being, that, okay, somebody's listened to me, and for once nobody has judged me or looked at me with, strange eyes, a kind of, those reactions. When sometimes family is not so easy to convince. Yeah. So these safe spaces are so important. And I understand that the numbers we are dealing with are very small right now. We are not creating that kind of impact, but we know we have a long way to go.
And I think around 700 or 800 people pan India have joined, right?
Yeah, we already are at that number, but I think we have still a very, very long way to go. Yeah. And as I shared at the World Bipolar Day conference, I feel it was a 10-year of internship. That was what our journey has been about at Bipolar India. Our real work begins now, and that is what I'm most excited about. Our real work, I think, which is going to I think actually reach out to our community members and even beyond our immediate community. Why should it be limited only to the community? That people who are formal members of the community, for instance. No, it should be to society. Yeah, to reaching out to society is the larger aim.
Yeah, that's true. I'm so excited for Bipolar India.
Thank you so much.
I had another question. We often see people with mental illnesses achieving great strides, be it in technology or entrepreneurship or social sciences or innovation. But at the same time, there are people who are struggling to keep a job longer than, let's say, 3 months. So what would you say is different in these cases?
Again, as I said, it all at the root of it, if you go to it, the severity of illnesses, the disorder can vary across persons. We have not touched upon comorbidity at all.
That's another important part.
So, for instance, I have OCD as a comorbidity. Again, diagnosed very late. Right?
Just for the audience, could you tell us what comorbidity is?
So, comorbidity is when there can be two parallel diagnoses at the concurrent time. Yeah. So, we talk about physical morbidities. Yeah. Somebody living with diabetes or something like comorbidities. But within the mental health space, you could have comorbidities. Some people are, the big challenge is addiction, for instance. Comorbidity of addiction with bipolar disorder is very common, and with several other mental health diagnoses also, right? So I know of people within our community who have borderline personality overlapping with bipolar disorder. Some people have come through a background of PTSD. So if you look at these sort of aspects, is every person with bipolar disorder going through similar challenges at all then?
No.
First thing first, that is just in terms of diagnosis part. Second part, environment. You talked about support at home, caregiving. So what if environment at home is outright hostile? Forget non-supportive or uncaring. Third layer, outer society. What if you come from a marginalized background? LGBTQI. If you are a Dalit minority religion where you are persecuted because of the religion you belong. Are we talking about these aspects which we conveniently want to sort of overlook? If you are living with a condition with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia and you have LGBTQI, can you imagine the kind of discrimination and stigma that person faces?
Yeah.
We talk about stigma only about mental health, but there are many segments in society who are already bearing the brunt of stigma and discrimination. Yeah, for decades.
Intersectionality that comes into.
Correct. So the person's sexual preferences, the gender equation, so many things. So that is why, firstly, I would say comparisons are odious, as that is that niche, that cliche that we talk about. But beyond that, the person comes from so many various backgrounds. Like Aparna Piramal Raje spoke about her part, her experience at World Bipolar Day, and said so candidly that I was in that space of privilege that I could access therapy. I could afford many other things. That financially, that she didn't have anything to immediately worry about. And look, I'm not again comparing situations. I have been the sole person running the household expenses from age 19 to 60 till this age, and through all these ups and downs. What kind of a sort of a stressor is that to that person during turbulent times? I would say I was in a place of privilege as compared to many others. Yeah. So it's all a question of layers and degrees that you feel. There are so many infinite layers we talk about. So, second aspect, at an individual level, it's also about attitude and approach. My psychiatrist is to say that one thing is the illness itself, what it does to you, and then there is something which is your innate nature and personality. So my sister,
India hasn't even touched the surface yet, and we are just beginning to talk about this at a larger scale.
So there could be a problem in the approach also of the person, yeah. And again, this is not judging individuals. The illness itself is so damaging to the person's spirit and all that, yeah. But given all those circumstances, there would be some maybe 10 people who will take up the challenge, lead their lives, yeah. And there would be a set of people who would succumb to the problem. I'm not judging people here. Yeah, I'm empathetic to both sets of people, towards both sets of people. Yeah. Ultimately, we are looking at human beings first. We are not looking at successes and failures here, right? And that has been observed even in the battles with physical health. It's not just with mental health. Yeah. So our attitude and approach to what our challenges are can also shape how we, sort of face up to them. That's my personal learning and observation from life as a whole. Right? Yeah. Because I could have so easily given up my battle against asthma also. Many experts had given up on me. Literally, you'll find this dramatic. Many experts had given up on me that we have tried our best. Your case is hopeless. But there was something within me said, no, I want something better to, in life stored for me. So if you have that sort of resolute approach, so in a way, it's a fire which refuses to get doused. Okay. Yeah. So that spirit helps. And then, of course, good luck, fortune also plays a part. I have had more than my fair share of luck with kind mentors, friends, supporting people coming into my life. So a multitude of things, so good fortune. And that is why I become such a appreciative and a person who holds gratitude with such as a quality to have. Because I know that I wouldn't have walked this walk alone. There were so many supportive factors. So if I am in this space, I'm not suddenly going to forget about those people who were there with me in those times, are there with me even now, today.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We would be coming to an end, but before that, do you have a message for all the listeners who are listening to the episode right now?
So not a very long message, but I'll tell you one thing that was a turning point in my recovery journey. It was around 2008 when I was down in the dumps. Financially, things were not in good shape. My marriage was on the verge of a breakdown. We would have separated at that time. We had a young child. My relationships with others were not so hunky-dory either. I mean, everything that had to go wrong was wrong. And then on that day, I sat in my chair and I was a visualizer. I decided I'm not going to continue my life like this. I gave myself 5 years to be financially successful, to live a life that I visualize I want to be a happily married person, to be successful in all my relationships, healthy physically and mentally. And in 5 years' time, I was living that life.
Yeah.
So what my message is, at the end of the day, mental illness at a point of time crushes your self-belief. Anything else coming from others also, we take it with a pinch of salt. No, but I know that I'm worthless. They are encouraging me because they mean well for me. My case is beyond any hope. That is what our mind tricks us into believing. This is where I think self-belief is so critical to recovery in a mental health journey. So critical. Whenever feeling dark, tell yourself this. Where you are right now is a temporary phase. This is not how it's going to look like after a few months, few years. You don't know when. It will be brighter up at the end of it.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. Resilience is one of the things that always help you stand apart.
Yeah, thank you. And this is something I said that must go across. It is not something I wanted to just share as a super motivating kind of a message, but what really I bulldozed my mind, and that's into believing at that stage.
Oh, of course. Talking like I had said before, even before the recording, always, like every single time we have a conversation, you always make me feel so inspired and motivated, and it always ignites this passion in me because I see you do all that stuff that you're doing, and it is so inspiring. Even at this age, you have not given up, and you're like, it's very fresh to be. It feels very encouraging to be around you.
Thank you so much. And vice versa, I would say that it's so encouraging to have youngsters like you who are open about their journeys. It's so refreshing to come across people like you, Avantika, who are bubbling with energy, full of ideas, passion to make a difference. I think the future of mental health support foundation is secure when people like you will be the next rung of leadership. I'm assured about that.
It would be our pleasure. Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to talk about or add that I might have missed out on or I didn't ask?
Just one thing that I would like to add is that our conversation is, of course, more about mental health, but one needs to also learn to step back in life at certain points of time and look at the broader picture.
Mm-hmm.
At a point of time, when a person is diagnosed, the illness becomes the overwhelming factor in life. One cannot look beyond that illness. Okay. Oh my God, I got bipolar disorder. Now I got this. Again, that's a natural process. I was there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I mean about stepping back and looking at the larger picture? Life is a massive canvas. Life is a massive canvas. Today I know that bipolar disorder is a blip on the canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at that point of time, that was my whole canvas. I couldn't see anything else on the canvas. So, the transition, we need to understand life is such an experience, and illness cannot allow, allow a person to, dominate it so much that the illness becomes the person. It is not our identity either. Yeah, we are far, far bigger than an illness or a diagnosis. Yeah, learn to step back. Life is a magnificent experience, and then we'll see things in perspective and relegate the diagnosis to a corner where it is meant to be. And of course, that's a transition. I'm not saying it happens as dramatically as that.
Yeah, I'm learning. Throughout the last year with my therapist, that's what we have been focusing on, because I'm past the acceptance stage. But now, how do I advocate for mental health and share my journey, but at the same time not make it my entire identity? There's a fine line. You could talk about it, but at the same time, I know that I'm more than the diagnosis, and I also want to make sure that others know that as well, because you're more than your diagnosis. That it doesn't need to put you in a box.
Absolutely agree with you on that, Avantika. And I think these things come naturally to us. We learn by experience. You are young, you have your life ahead of you. So in fact, let me put this also on record, that if I were to go back to my age 20, I was not even 10% of what Avantika is in terms of a self-awareness, a groundedness, a focus, a passion. So I think it is mind-boggling that what these people can achieve in their lives. And that is what the whole thing is, how it excites me. Yeah. And I really mean what I'm saying, because I can see the difference between me at 20 and when I see the youth at 20, at 25 and other ages. They are so sort of sorted out.
They're so talented. So. Thank you so much for your time. I will be linking Bipolar India's website links and everything in the description, and also Instagram as well. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And as usual, we have overshot quite a bit, I'm sure.
No, it's completely fine. This has been a very helpful conversation, and I'm sure everyone is going to love it. So thank you for your time again.
You're most welcome, and thank you for having me, Avantika.
Thank you everyone for sticking to the end and listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it insightful. If you did, do share it with your loved ones, the people that you know, so it reaches out to more people and helps someone out there. All of Bipolar India's Instagram and website and more about Vijay's social media will be linked in the description below. Bipolar India has a very efficient pan-India support group for not just people diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and many other disorders, but also for the caregivers of such people. So if you're someone or if you know someone who fits into any of the categories, do tell them about Bipolar India. They've been doing an amazing work, and yeah, the support group really helps. Being a part of support group, knowing and hearing other people going through something similar, and having a safe space really goes a long way in the process of recovery. My Instagram and email will be linked down below. If you want to reach out to us, please do. I would love to know what you thought about the episode. I would love to get your feedback and what kind of content you would like to see more of. And yeah, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode. I love you. Bye.